in. I hope you are having a fabulous Friday here. We are getting ready to get into the weekend, and I don't know about y'all, but I am ready for the weekend. So come on in, get your popcorn, get your drinks, sit down, let's get comfortable. We got to get into some things. Uncle Shay Shay, Shannon Sharpe fumbled the bag, y'all. He done fumbled the bag. And it was released this week that ESPN has cut ties with their relationship with Uncle Shay Shay. And on top of that, we have learned he is also retired an OF model. So, I don't think 2025 is quite going in the direction that Shannon Sharpe had planned. I'm sure when he was sitting down thinking about what 2025 was going to be, I'm sure he thought he was going to ride the wave that started in 2024 after his Cat Williams interview. And it looks like the universe had other plans. So, of course, we have to get into that. That's the latest topic that's been coming up quite a bit here. And then we also have a cause of death for Hulk Hogan, the wrestling legend, the icon, the titan that passed away at the end of July, shocking the world. Although Hulk Hogan was older, and he had noticeably had a little loss of pep in his step, but that's okay. He was 71 years old, so it would not be unusual when you're at that age and you have a very physical sport for a living of wrestling where you're putting your body through a lot to entertain millions, billions around the world, that you may not have the same mobility once you get to the 70s. But sadly he did pass away here, and his cause of death is now been revealed, so we'll need to get into that. And before we go any further, if you're not familiar with me, my name is Aries Rose, and welcome to Aries Rose TV. Here we talk about streaming shows, movies, TV shows, world news, local news, politics, celebrity news. Basically anything I find interesting, I come on and discuss with my Aries crew. If you've been on a live before, you know the drill. If you are a returning Aries crew member, leave hashtag Aries crew in the comments. If you are a first-time watcher, the first-time watcher in the comments, I want to give you a shout out for stopping by and spending part of your day here. When you subscribe to the channel, let me know in the comments. I want to personally welcome you to the Aries crew. We have fun over here. It is free to join. All you got to do is hit that subscription button, then hit that notification bell so you can find out every time I go live, post videos, post in the community tab, and all of that good stuff. If you're on Instagram, follow us at Aries Rose TV. Let us know you are from YouTube, and we will follow you back. Take a little pause for comments. Laji, welcome. Appreciate you stopping by. Let me know how your Friday is going as you come in. Leave a TGIF if you are happy that it's Friday. I know I am. And if you have a business or a service that you want to advertise on the channel, I'm going to leave my business email in the description box. Reach out and we will see if it is a good fit. And on YouTube here, they have a leaderboard on the live, so run up those comments and questions on here. The more you interact, the higher up you go on the leaderboard, and we will definitely shout you out here throughout the live. And let's get into our topics for tonight. So the wrestling legend Hulk Hogan, his cause of death has been revealed. So Hulk Hogan, the last time I saw him was on Raw. When Raw debuted on Netflix January 6th, leave a January 6th in the comments if you watched that debut on Netflix of Raw. And he came out towards the end of the show and he was booed, which actually surprised me because Hulk Hogan is a pretty beloved a character persona, if you will, in the wrestling world. And I think there is no question, at least that I've ever seen, that he is pretty much the undisputed person who made the sports entertainment of wrestling international. When he came on the scene, whatever it was about this individual just propelled that sport into what it is today. Prior to that, it was not necessarily something that you sat at home and watched together as a family. You may not even necessarily be familiar with all the wrestling characters, but as soon as Vince McMahon, who was previously the owner of the WWE, as soon as he kind of got that business under his grasp. And then he started working with Hogan. Those two together were like peanut butter and jelly. They were magic. And pretty much it was like a rocket was strapped on to Hulk Hogan's back and he just took off. And from there, the business just followed right along with him. And right at the time that he burst into the scene and the WWF is what it was called at that time, was becoming the juggernaut that we know now, was the time I was watching wrestling. So I was a huge fan of Hulk Hogan, Randy Macho Man Savage, Ultimate Warrior, um, what is it? Jake the Snake Roberts, Bret the Hitman Hart, all of them. Back in that time, that was like my favorite time of wrestling. I felt like that was the best time of wrestling, and that's when I became a fan, and Hulk Hogan was like the man at that time, so he was my absolute favorite. Now, he did have some controversy later on in life. He did make some very questionable and disappointing comments about people of color, and that was pretty devastating because he was just seen as this superhero, pretty much like larger than life persona. And to hear him speaking that way was just definitely a clash in my mind to the image that I had. And, as I've gotten older, I've had to separate the persona of Hulk Hogan from the person, Terry Bollea. I still enjoy Hulk Hogan, the persona, that character. I still think that very highly of that person. The individual, Terry Bollea, flawed like the rest of us. Not a big fan of all of those things, but all things considered, and especially with his passing, it's kind of like something you can't hold against that person anymore because they're no longer here. But he did do a huge contribution to wrestling. It would not be what it is today if it was not for him. And there were so many people who have careers as wrestlers that also went on to be pretty big in entertainment, like The Rock. Basically, Hulk Hogan crawled so The Rock could run. The Rock is what Hulk Hogan would have been if things were the way they are now at that time. That's what The Rock is. He was able to just take it up a notch, and I want to say I've heard he's the most followed man on Instagram, and he pretty much can make any movie have some type of profit because he's just got such a large fan base that they're going to go out and support his films. Even if the film is not very good, just The Rock alone is a good enough selling point to get people to come out to the theater. So I mean, he just is just as likable and has the same charisma as Hulk Hogan. So he definitely built on that legacy. John Cena, not quite the same movie career as maybe The Rock has had, but he's another one that kind of was able to transcend from wrestling and go into movies and other entertainment genres because Hulk Hogan made that okay. He kind of opened the door for wrestlers to be seen as more than just wrestler. So he is definitely a goat, a blueprint, the original. I just think there's not going to be another one like him. There's never been since him, and I don't think there ever will be, in my personal opinion. So when he passed away, it was like a bright shooting star kind of fall into the sky the moment when you realize, oh, they're human, they're mortal, and it just seemed like Hulk Hogan was always going to be there. He had been there forever. He was one of the only ones I feel like from his time, one of a few that still left from his time. Randy Macho Man Savage is gone. The Ultimate Warrior passed away. I think the British Bulldog, like quite a few wrestlers from his time, Roddy Piper, they passed away from various health issues or different things they had going on. And the Hulk was still here up until his 70s. So, that is a pretty good run, all things considered, from what they do to their bodies to wrestle, just how physical that sport is. I think he talked about how many surgeries he had and how a lot of his body parts weren't even original anymore because of how much surgeries he's had to have. So I can just only imagine the pain and how much physical exertion that it takes to be out there wrestling. And back in the time Hulk Hogan was wrestling, they say they were going 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year. So they rarely had time to rest unless they were injured. And back in those days, they say if they were injured and you didn't wrestle, you didn't get paid. So a lot of the wrestlers were going out injured. So, I'm sure that just makes something even worse. But they did it and he did it. And he was able to make it, quite a bit further than some of his other colleagues. But sadly, that time did come to an end. and his cause of death is now known. So he had experienced cardiac arrest, and when the emergency crew had got there to try and revive him, they did their best, but he was unable to be revived. And there was some talk that he had just had a major neck surgery, and about whether or not before he was going out to promote, he was doing Real American Beer, I believe, was his company that he had recently been promoting. I know he had reported that a lot on the WWE. I remember him talking about it on Raw, the Raw Netflix debut, and I'm sure he was going around doing different promotional things on that. And he had the American Freestyle Wrestling he was doing with Eric Bischoff. So for a 71-year-old man, he was still going, had a lot of ventures out there. And I don't know if he took the time that he needed to recover from this neck surgery. They say it was major, or what may have occurred there with that. But his death certificate has been released, so TMZ is reporting on it. And this is reporting from TMZ. Hulk Hogan's always going to be remembered as one of the most famous wrestlers of all time, and that even holds true on his death certificate. TMZ Sports obtained the certification of death for Hulk, and as you can see, the document lists his occupation as professional wrestler in the entertainment industry. Holt's death certificate lists a bunch of stuff we already knew: his date and place of death, his birthday, his birthplace, his race, his education, his marital status, his widow's name, his parents' name, but it's still surreal to see. The document also notes Hulk's remains were cremated in Clearwater, Florida, which is where I believe he was living at that time. I want to say he'd been probably living in Florida for a while now. And it says, we broke the story. Hulk was rushed to the hospital July 24th at 9:51 a.m. after 911 received a call for cardiac arrest at his Clearwater, Florida home. Despite paramedics and doctors' best attempts, Hogan was pronounced dead at a local hospital a few minutes after 11 a.m. Hulk's official cause of death was previously revealed as a heart attack. His medical records also showed a history of arterial fibrillation, a heart condition that causes an irregular heartbeat. Hulk Hogan was also diagnosed with a form of cancer, chronic lymphatic leukemia, though details surrounding the cancer are unclear. So, very sad news, but it looks like he had a heart attack. And WWE did do a tribute to him on Friday Night SmackDown after the incident occurred on the 24th. Then they also did a tribute to him on Monday Night's Raw as well. And his son Nick Bolea attended the tribute that they did on Monday Night's Raw. So it was nice to see him. His daughter Brooke says that she was not invited by the WWE, so that's why she was not there. And it's kind of been well known and discussed that Brooke and Hulk had an estrangement at the time of his passing. But she did say during their last conversation, which I believe was a couple years ago, that she was able to tell her father that she loved him, and that, she expressed concern, thinking that, due to his health kind of declining at the point of his age, and especially he was just working himself too hard. But Hulk came from a time when you had to just keep working to make money. And I saw on a TMZ special they did with him where he talked about how he kind of grew up without having a lot of money, and his dad didn't have a lot of money, and that really stuck with him, and he always wanted to make sure that he didn't have that problem. And I can understand that feeling when you grow up without having and then you start to get stuff. You just really believe you have to just keep working to keep having it because you don't want to not have it. So I think he didn't know how to slow down, and just in his generation, in his time, you just keep working, you always work. And so it's very unfortunate that he couldn't maybe slow down and enjoy the fruits of his labor and the legacy that he had created. But, it is fortunate that they had that conversation. You truly never know when it's going to be your time. So you just kind of have to, or when it's going to be somebody else's time that you're interacting with. So you just kind of always got to move like maybe it will be the last time you talk to somebody. I definitely experienced that my own self this year when the father of my two younger children passed away unexpectedly in June. That was a really devastating blow, and it caught me off guard, and it's still taking me some time to kind of process it, come to grips with it, and understand what's happening and just trying to figure out the new life without that person, being there, and just feeling like it would have been nice to have some kind of thought that, you were kind of getting towards the end or it was going to be the end. And sometimes it's not always obvious. So you just kind of got to understand that when you're interacting with people and try to always move with that in your mind. Let me know if you enjoyed Hulk Hogan with the pro wrestling, if you were a fan. If you still watch wrestling, let me know. And who is your favorite wrestler? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments. I love reading what the Aries crew thinks and has to say on these topics. And now let's get to Uncle Shannon Sharpe. So this year has probably not been the year that he was anticipating when you're sitting there planning out what you want your goals to be for the year, what you see happening. If he even does that, I'm pretty confident none of this stuff was on his 2025 bingo card, but here we are. So let's get you caught up if you're not familiar. We do have a Shannon Sharpe playlist, so you can go back and check that out to get all caught up. But we're going to do a quick little Cliff Notes recap here. So Shannon Sharpe was sued by Jane Doe, who's being represented by Tony Busby. At the time the lawsuit was filed, it had just kind of been on the heels of Jay-Z suing Tony Busby for defamation for filing a lawsuit against him, stating that he had done some questionable stuff with a young woman who was underage at the time, so she alleges. And so when this came out, when Tony Busby had amended the lawsuit that was initially filed against Diddy and included Jay-Z as one of the unnamed celebrities that allegedly took advantage of this young woman who was a teenager at the time, underage, it became a big story, which is not surprising. Jay-Z is one of the top names in hip hop. He's also married to Beyonce, who's pretty much the top for R&B. She rose to the top with her country album. She did a house inspired album. They also got a lot of accolades. So Beyonce is still a huge name, one of the top entertainers and performers that's still left out there, just from a different time as far as I'm concerned, just with putting on a show and having that showmanship. So naturally, because those two are powerhouses, that's just going to take off and be viral news, and it was. And Jay-Z was adamant that he was innocent, and he fought back, and he was very vocal about fighting back. And that lawsuit was ultimately dropped by Tony Busby, and it was dropped with prejudice. Well, it was dropped by the Jane Doe that filed it, but Tony Busby went and filed that paperwork on behalf of the Jane Doe to drop that case with prejudice, meaning that it can never be filed again. So allegedly, this Jane Doe says, I'm not changing my story. I'm not saying that it's not true. She just didn't want to move forward with the lawsuit for whatever reason. Now, in my opinion, if you believe that it is true, you think or you can prove that it is true, why would you file? Why would you drop the lawsuit and then take away your ability to refile it? So to me, that's sketch, but that's just my opinion on that. Well, with that being out in the news, then it becomes questionable anytime Tony Busby's name is attached to a lawsuit, because you just had one dropped, and it's dropped under questionable circumstances of if there was any validity to it to begin with. So when the lawsuit was initially filed, and it was when the lawsuit was initially filed against Shannon Sharpe by Jane Doe, and then it was known the lawyer was Tony Busby, we're kind of like, okay, could this be another Jay-Z case? Like, is Tony Busby coming with facts here? Or is this another one where he may not have done a really good job of vetting? Well, it looks like there was potentially some more truth to this lawsuit than there was with the one that he filed with the other Jane Doe against Jay-Z. Because after that lawsuit was filed and it was known, then Shannon Sharpe does a statement. And the statement that he gave, I felt like, was trying to make this Jane Doe seem like she was more of a perpetrator than a victim, and that he was kind of manipulated and taken advantage of, and put in a situation that caused this. But it still was not a good look. I felt like his response to it and the way he approached that lawsuit with his statement after the lawsuit was filed, it just didn't look good. It didn't give off the right energy. And especially once her age was known, that this Jane Doe that Shannon Sharpe provided the name of, might I add, nobody knew who the Jane Doe was outside of Obviously, her lawyer and clearly Shannon Sharpe, and Shannon Sharpe released the name of Jane Doe and put her information out there like that. And because Jane Doe hasn't confirmed it here, trying to be respectful on the name, but that lawsuit and his response, it was not giving good energy at all. It was not a good look. He works with or he worked with ESPN at the time, along with the stuff that he was doing on YouTube with Nightcap with Chad Ochocinco. And then he also had Club Shay Shay, and I believe there's something else that he works on as well. But I know he had those two things going on for himself, and then he was working on ESPN. And I believe Stephen A. Smith said he helped get him the ESPN job. Well, once this lawsuit came out, ESPN is owned by the House of the Mouse, so there's no way they want this type of lawsuit for what she was alleging was going on to be associated with their business. And the voice messages that were coming out between those two were definitely not a good look for Uncle Shannon. And once her age of being 19 years old when he met her and he was in his early 50s was known, it just left an even worse taste in people's mouths, because at that age, he definitely knew better. And I feel that exact same way. If something false was said about him, I do feel for you on that front. I do feel for you that his personal business was put out there, because Shannon Sharpe has always come off as very private to me. So I can understand having these things out here about him. It was probably very uncomfortable, because that wasn't something that he tended to discuss or put out there on his own. But I have to say, at being 50, there was no reason you should have been talking to somebody at that age that had essentially just graduated from high school not that much before you met them. That is a huge age gap. If my kids at that age brought home somebody in their 50s talking about we are in love or I want to do this relationship, I'm going to have a huge problem with that. I'm personally not going to let that slide. That's just not going to work for me, and the person that's older should know better. I'm questioning why you want to be around or with someone that's at that age when it's twice, 2.5 times your age. I'm concerned about you and why you think that that's okay. To me, that is just way too close to 18. If you want to go younger, that's your prerogative, right? But you can go younger in your 30s. Heck, you can go younger in the 20s. At least get the mid to later 20s. But that's absolutely insane to me, to be 52, 53, trying to run around with a 19-year-old. That's not anything I would do, and I'm just really shocked for somebody who had a lot more to lose that wouldn't be thinking like, this doesn't make sense. It's not going to look good. And really, outside of potentially a physical attraction, what could you possibly have in common with somebody who grew up in a completely different time than you? Um, it was just bizarre to begin with, but all of those factors were not working to make Uncle Shannon look very good. And I'm not surprised when it then came out from him that he was going to be separating from ESPN temporarily and was going to come back during the NFL draft, because he was going to go focus on this lawsuit and spend time with his family and friends. Well, I felt like, and you can go back and look at the videos I did, that was code for he had no choice. I don't think he left ESPN by his own version. I think that they gave him the ability to save face, to say it was his choice, but I don't think he had a choice. Disney does not want that kind of publicity. It is a family oriented business at its core. That's how it started. I don't think that will change in my lifetime. So you cannot have that with somebody that was so young and think that that was going to fly. So maybe he thought because they let that My Michelle accidental IG live, whatever that was, slide, that he thought maybe he could try and use that same logic here to let this one slide, or just try and put it all off on Jane Doe, but different circumstances, and it wasn't going to fly. So I think he had to, step away, and they said, you can go out and say it all you want, but you can't be coming back here. And it finally came out this week, to nobody's surprise, that he will not be returning to ESPN. why that is even something that's being brought up is because this is right around after the lawsuit was settled with Jane Doe. So in his statement, he was emphatic that this was a shakedown and that, Tony Busby targets black men. And that's what he did with Jay-Z, trying to compare his situation to Jay-Z's situation. But the difference was Tony Busby came with some receipts that at least Shannon Sharpe had some knowledge of this Jane Doe. They had some kind of interaction together. And then Shannon Sharpe released information on his end. Whoever his legal counsel is, he should not be using them because they didn't really do him any favors. Once he stopped talking, stopped releasing stuff, it was much better. I just would never have advised him to do what he was doing in the beginning because it just was all making him look not so great to be able to even come back if it did work out with the ESPN. He was just saying things that I would have suggested to my client, please don't talk. And then that lawyer should not have been talking because his lawyer is the one that let us know that they had an initial offer of a $10 million settlement to Jane Doe. And I don't know why you'd offer a $10 million settlement to Jane Doe if you are not guilty or don't have something that you don't want known. So I'm not necessarily saying a settlement makes you guilty, but I am saying if I didn't do anything wrong, I'm not paying you $10 million. I'm not even paying you $10. And I want you to pay my legal fees for the hassle that you're putting me through if you're suing me for something that I'm saying has no merit. I'm just not giving up my money like that, and I would not give up that type of money like that. So that alone kind of raised fears like, well, why would you be giving somebody a $10 million settlement if you didn't do anything wrong here? If this is all just a shakedown, that's quite a bit of money to just go ahead and offer. But obviously, Jane Doe did not take that. I don't know if she knew about his pending $100 million podcast deal that he was in talks for at the time that lawsuit was dropped. But from what I have been hearing, that did not end up coming to fruition, which I'm not surprised because as soon as stuff like that comes out, nobody's going to want to be associated. So it looks like that may not have been a deal that Shannon Sharpe was able to capitalize on. But nonetheless, that lawsuit wasn't going anywhere. And then that lawsuit was settled, and it's believed that it may have been around 20 or so million that was given to this Jane Doe. And from there, this Jane Doe made an announcement that she was retiring from OF. And as I've heard some other people put it, it looks like the check cleared. And I have the statement here, and we're going to put up that statement for Jane Doe announcing the retirement here. And so this is today I've decided to retire from OF. Thank you for the incredible support you've shown me over the past few years. This opportunity or this community has given me a life I could never have imagined. I'll still be active on social media and have several new projects in the works that I can't wait to share. I'm truly excited for this next chapter. I love you forever and ever. So that to me is absolutely wild that somebody got paid enough that you are retiring an OF model and you've worked your whole life to get to the point where you are right now to build up your money only to have it lost by making decisions with your little mind and not with the big mind. So if there's anything to be learned by this situation with Shannon Sharpe, discretion with a capital D is very, very important. And not only that, it is very important to be disciplined and thoughtful about who you are going to be dealing with when you are a high profile individual that has money and a reputation and something to lose. You just have to make smarter decisions and you have to think more carefully before you just deal with anybody or want to associate with anybody, because when you have more to lose, you may be the one who ends up losing out the most. And it just did not seem like Shannon Sharpe was thinking with the big Shannon Sharpe mind. It seemed like he was thinking with the little Shannon Sharpe mind. And that just kind of came back to bite him in many different ways. And now you don't have your co-hosting opportunity on ESPN. You may not ever go back to them in the future, but definitely not anytime soon in the near future. He also had to cancel the tour, the podcast tour. He was going to go on with Chad Ochocinco for Nightcap. So this has definitely impacted his standing, his reputation, opportunities. He said that he had asked that this announcement about him no longer working with ESPN be held off until Monday because his brother Sterling is being inducted into the Football Hall of Fame. And it's the first time that two brothers are being inducted, or first time two brothers will be in the Football Hall of Fame. So it's a big deal. And he wanted his brother to have this time where the shine was on him and it wasn't kind of bifurcated by also including him in this story or even overshadowing the accomplishment of his brother being inducted into the Football Hall of Fame. But Shannon Sharpe is the bigger name. And not to take away any accolades from his brother, congratulations. I am sure that you deserve it. And it's unfortunate that it kind of got entangled in this timing. But some of those things are going to be out of the control. And it's still an accomplishment to be proud of. But, you know, it's unfortunate that some of that's going to be overshadowed by those decisions that were just publicly known by the general public about what has occurred with Shannon Sharpe. So, I mean, if Fumble the Bag had a face, this would have to be it. So I hope it's a lesson for anybody in the future. Secure your money, secure your mind, take a deep breath, do whatever you need to do that helps you to be clear-minded when you make decisions, but just try and always be thoughtful about that because you just created generational wealth for somebody else. He gave somebody else the ability to retire without having to go to college, without having to do really a whole lot of work for making millions, and he's still working right now. Past, I don't know if he's at 60 yet or still in his 50s, but he's still got to work, and somebody else is out here saying, hey, I retired. And it's nasty work. That is nasty work. And I I feel for Shannon in some ways, and in other ways, I say, you know, you got to move smarter. Some, you know, play stupid games, win stupid prizes is probably the most appropriate thing to say in this situation. But I definitely want to hear your thoughts on it. What do you think about Shannon Sharpe losing his job at ESPN? Everything that has gone on with the settlement, how it was handled when that lawsuit was first made public. Let's keep that conversation going in the comments. I love hearing from the Aries crew. You always have great conversation in here. Let's keep that going. If you have not already done so and you've been on the live this long, subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you here at the Aries crew. We have fun over here. All you got to do is hit that subscription button and then hit that notification bell so you can find out every time we go live, post videos, or post on the communities tab. As you come in, hit that like button. It goes a long way and it helps to support the channel so we can get some more eyes on us and grow. We're trying to reach 2K by the fall. So share this live out with family and friends. We'll be back on live this weekend. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.